Hey, yo everyone, Andrew here, bringing you another video review, and today we're going to be doing Batman, Volume 1, The Court of Owls. Batman. In the New 52, Batman is one of the most prolific characters out there. He has 4 comics, with a 5th one coming out this month, to himself. He also stars in Justice League and also Justice League International along with other superheroes. And he guest stars in various different comics throughout the DC universe, showing up in comics from Nightwing to I, Vampire, from Batgirl to Batwoman. He's just, well, he's everywhere. And with all the Batman material out there, which one is really the one that you want to look at? Which is the one that you want to get hooked on? Well, it would be none other than the Batman comic itself. And the first 7 issues are collected in this trade. Because, see, this month is the start of DC releasing their trades for the New 52. And while I have been picking up the individual issues for, well, God knows how many of the New 52s, I feel like well over 30 of them, I do feel like I need to pick up some of the trades. And in a previous video, I claimed that I was going to pick up, at the very least, Batman, Justice League, and Wonder Woman for the New 52. Now, whether or not I pick up other stuff, we'll see. Who knows? But I just had to pick up those 3 comics. And Batman was at the top of the list to pick up. Because, see, Batman in the New 52 is done up by Scott Snyder. And if you know anything about Scott Snyder, you know that he's been rocking the bat for the past few years now. From Dick Grayson in Detective Comics, switching all the way over to Batman and Batman comic. And see, the thing about Scott Snyder that makes him such an appealing writer on Batman is not only is he a good writer, but Scott Snyder is a fan of Batman. It is his favorite character, along with Swamp Thing, which ironically is another comic that he's writing in the New 52. And being a fan of a certain character can either be really good or it can be really bad when writing that character. See, if I was ever a writer, I don't think I would ever want to write Batman. Well, I would want to write Batman, but I don't think I ever would, because I think I would just spoil Batman as a character too much. And that's one of the problems with being a fan of a character, is that you can make that character into some kind of super god, always succeeding, and basically doing a love letter to that character. But on the other hand, with writers who have a certain level of skill and restraint when it comes down to their characters, not only will they be able to write that character well, but because they have such a love for the character and an intimacy with that character, they'll be able to tell great stories with that character that maybe other writers wouldn't be able to tell. And that's the thing with Scott Snyder. He loves Batman, he understands Batman, and he wants to deliver good Batman stories. But he's not willing to do a love letter to Batman, where the Bat God comes out and defeats every single villain, always outthinking them, outsmarting them, and defeating them before they even lift a finger. No, Scott Snyder has a great respect for Batman, and he's willing to deliver us great Batman stories. So, in saying that, let's actually jump in to the first volume of Batman in the New 52. Now, as most of you guys know, and some of you may not, but I'm coming at this perspective from a person that's read the individual issues and also for a person that's read the trade. So, see, the thing is I've been collecting the New 52. I have all my boxes over there with my New 52 comics, and I've been collecting a lot of them. But I've read the Batman individual issues, and I've also read this trade. This trade is actually surprisingly very up to date. It goes up to issue 7, where we're on issue number 9 right now of Batman. So you're only really 2 issues off. If you want to continue this story after reading this trade, you can pick up the other 2 issues pretty easily. But like I said, I'm coming from this from the perspective of someone that's read the individual issues and also the trade. So I'll be able to give you analysis on what works better, reading it in individual issues or reading it in trade. Now the basic story is this. Batman is back in Gotham as the sole Batman, the only Batman. Dick Grayson has returned back to the role of Nightwing. And he is in the place that he feels most comfortable. Despite how bad Gotham is, despite how gringy and dark it is, He understands Gotham. It is his home. It is his place that he lives. He has fought countless enemies in Gotham. He knows every nook and cranny of this city. However, as much as Batman thinks it's his city, it's really not. A secret organization going by the name of the Court of Owls, thought only to be a lullaby, a child's tale told to kids so that they could go to bed at night, has started to rear its ugly head. See, this Court of Owls has been with Gotham since its beginning, and has thought nothing of Batman up to this point. Just another guy in a cape and a mask, vigilanting around. Nothing too big for the Court of Owls. But see, the thing is Batman started to do things that the Court of Owls has not liked. He started to rub their feathers the wrong way. And the Court of Owls started to rear its head and start looking upon Batman. See, Batman isn't going up against another Joker or another Two-Face. He's going up against Gotham itself. And he's put into situations and predicaments against an enemy bigger than himself. Will Batman be able to come out of this? And if he does, will he be able to come out of it unscathed and be able to heal up the wounds? Or will fighting a foe as powerful as the Court of Owls be too much, even for the Dark Knight? Well, you're just going to have to read and see. So let's get into the good, the bad, and whether or not you should get this. Good. Greg Capullo's art in this is very good and is very stylized and very dynamic. While I may not be a huge fan of Greg Capullo because I really haven't read or seen anything of his beforehand, his art is really nice, and what I really do like is that dynamic factor. The way he makes Batman move when he fights, or how he stylizes Batman's cape when he flows, or just overall how Batman is portrayed in this is kind of akin to the old Batman the Animated Series, but a little bit tighter, a little bit more stylized, and a little bit more dynamic. He has a great level of detail to his drawings, and I appreciate that, and it works well for the story. And Scott Snyder has not only hit it out of the ballpark with this story, but he flew up, caught the ball, threw it in another direction, and then hit it out of the ballpark yet again. You could say that this is kind of a love letter video to Scott Snyder, but I'll try not to make it. But Scott Snyder really has been starting to write some of the best Batman stories this generation. People can talk about the Grant Morrisons and the Paul Dinnies of the past 5, 6, 7 years. God knows I've done it. I've basically pronounced my undying love for Paul Dini as a writer. But Scott Snyder kind of came out of nowhere. He kind of just came into our hearts, and he's been showing us fantastic Batman stories. If I could equate Scott Snyder to anyone, if I could relate him to anyone, he kind of reminds me of Tom Brady from the New England Patriots. I live in New England, so this reference will probably be best suited for people who also live in New England. But Tom Brady was relatively a no one. It wasn't until Drew Bledsoe got injured that Tom Brady came on the scene. And boy, did Tom Brady blow us away, because he became arguably one of the best quarterbacks of all time. I don't know if you would consider him the best. I'm not a big sports fan, so whatever. But he's definitely in the discussion. When you talk about the greats, talk about him. A great throwing record, 3 championships underneath his belt, a near undefeated season. And that's kind of what it's like with Scott Snyder. He's coming out of nowhere. No one saw him come. I mean, he's worked on like American Vampire and various different other comics within Vertigo and DC, but it wasn't until he started his run on Detective that we're like, who is this guy? And where has he been all our lives? And that's just the thing. Scott Snyder does a fantastic job at writing Batman in this. He has a good understanding of Batman, the character, and he also has an understanding of how to balance Batman as being this powerful, intellectual individual, while at the same time making him believable and vulnerable. Batman gets the shit kicked out of him. There's no way around it. He faces an enemy that is grander than him, bigger than Gotham itself. and he gets the shit kicked out of him. But he's still Batman. He's still in to work through it. And he's still willing to do what needs to be done to get things done. He's a survivalist. He's a problem solver, and he's dealt with a huge problem here. Can't just use Venn diagrams and your TI-83 calculator to get out of this. No, you're gonna have to think through this and get through this problem, and Batman does it. At least to a degree, he does. Also, a new villain is introduced in this, and I always like the introduction of new Batman villains. Now, sometimes they are handled badly, and probably more often than they're handled good, but the Court of Owls really come off as a great bad guy because it isn't just another psychopath. It's just not another crime lord or some supervillain wearing a flashy comic book costume. It is this organization that is in Gotham, rooted deeply in Gotham, and they take shit from no one. They're in control. I like the costumes that are used for the assassins, the talons, the theme of the owl. Maybe it's because owls are predators of the bats, or maybe it's because Owlman's always been the opposite of Batman, or maybe it's because owls are my favorite birds. But owls as the theme was a really good choice. Um, I also like the history of Gotham in this. You get to see a lot of the history of Gotham played out through these 7 issues. And if you've been reading any of the New 52, you get to see some of that transition over into stuff like Nightwing or All-Star Western, the history of Gotham, which is great. The dialogue is beautiful in this, especially when Scott Snyder is using the inner dialogue of Batman, kind of having Batman think through situations, which is really great. Bad. Um, there's only one small bad, but it's really more of a personal thing. Bruce is in denial of the Court of Owls for a good chunk of this comic, despite the fact that evidence of the Court of Owls exists. I find it very unlikely for Bruce to write off the Court of Owls. They try to give an explanation that he's already looked into the Court of Owls several times, but again, it seems a little off that he's just gonna, not believe in them until shit really goes down. Besides that, uh, should you get it? Absolutely. Uh, Court of Owls, Volume 1, is part of a bigger story, which you're probably thinking, is this going to hurt me if I pick up Volume 1 and have to wait till Volume 2? Probably not, because it ends off at a good note. It ends off actually at the perfect place with a cliffhanger. So it's not like if you get this volume that you're going to be missing anything and waiting for Volume 2. It leaves you off on a good note. It doesn't end like right at a awkward stage of the story. Uh, this is a pretty bold statement for me to say. But Scott Snyder's run on Batman thus far has probably been one of, if not my favorite runs on Batman. I will put it up there next to Paul Dini's or Chuck Dixon's run on Batman, and if not, it could surpass it. I'm not going to make any final decisions until Scott Snyder is done with his first story arc in Night of the Owls. Although this collects the first 7 issues of the story is probably going to go on until issue 12. Scott Snyder said that he wants to make this a epic like Batman Hush or Nightfall or Long Halloween, where it goes on for a year for 12 issues. And I'm quite okay with that. The story is just so good, it's so rich, and so much effort was put on this. Not only from the writing aspect, I talk a lot about Scott Snyder in this, but also from the artistic point of view. Greg Capullo's art on this is really good, and while he's not my favorite artist, I have my Jim Lees and my George Perez's and my Ed Ben's and so on and so forth. Greg Capullo is quickly rising up to the ranks as one of my favorite artists. He really knows how to do Batman very well, and do the art for Batman very well with the whole universe. This is just a sample of his art, and it's just really good. This is a absolute must-have for comic book readers and Batman readers. It's a 5 out of 5 stars. A fantastic story that's been told thus far, and we're only about halfway through it. Well, we're on issue 9 for people that are reading issues, but I mean, still, it's a fantastic story. A plus 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 plus. When you're talking about the New 52, you're talking about how good it's been, and a lot of people may not agree with me on this, but I think the New 52 really allows writers and creative teams and artists to pull out all the stops. And for the most part, with the exception of some hiccups here and there, we've been getting some fantastic work from DC Comics, some of the best in years. And at the pinnacle of it, at the very top, and this is again a bold statement, and maybe you're thinking I'm a little biased because he's my favorite character, but Batman's at the top. He's up there with story likes of Swamp Thing and Flash and Wonder Woman, but he's at the top. He's the Batman, and this is a must get for Batman fans. Pick it up. I recommend getting the hardcover. It's going to be about $24.99. And you do get some extra stuff in the back. You get all the variant covers, which I've also collected. So it was nice seeing all those again. Actually, my favorite Batman cover is the variant cover for issue number 2. You get to see some character designs. I'm just going to flip through this. And some panels and discussions with, how the breakups were done by Scott Snyder. So definitely worth picking up. Get it now. Don't wait for the soft cover. Get the hardcover. Get it now. With that said, I'm going to end this review here. This is Andrew saying peace out for now.